Afternoon, everyone. This is the first of the series of what we call the development in practice in the real world, a series of the Monash International Development Practice Association. It's an association of students enrolled in international development practice. So this is our education series. So before anything else, we in everybody here, we wish to acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nations on whose land the Monash University operates. And we also pay respects to their elders, past and present, as well as we pay respects to the elders, past and present, of the land where everybody is right now, in whichever country you're in right now. Good afternoon, everyone. Before anything else, can I please welcome Laklan to please welcome everyone to this session. Laklan is our president of the MIDPA.
Thanks, Nelia. And I guess, yeah, I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners. I think it's particularly relevant for the work that we're doing here in development and across the globe to acknowledge the traditional owners of this country who've looked after and cared for it for many years to date. And I guess acknowledge our responsibility now to support them in continuing to care for this country and the people living on it for years to come. In terms of this event, I guess I would like to welcome everybody. I'd like to thank Nelia for her work in organising it, and also for our guest speakers who've given up their time to come along and present to us. I'm really looking forward to hearing the insights. I think we've got a really great panel of speakers, and so I hope everyone else is really excited as well. And finally, thank you to the MIDPA students. Welcome, and other guests as well. Welcome. We hope that you learn something or get something out of today. And I guess without further ado, I'll hand over back to Nelia to continue the proceedings. But welcome everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Laklan, and thank you as well to Alexis and to Farah and to Miru and helping me out. I see Sister Rosita is now here. Hi, Sister Rosita and Jaramaya. They're our discussants from Nepal. Thank you. So just to quickly describe, as mentioned, this is going to be a conversation space, digital as, of course, obviously it is, between students of international development practice and the development practitioners. And we see this as, for us, learning development principles from references, from books, from our classes. Obviously, it's quite different when you see it on field. And so we conceived of this particular session to be able to, in a sense, engage and be able to understand how does, for example, how is participation? Like when you talk to somebody from the field, when you talk to a community leader, is that participation? What does do no harm in on field? So those things those things are interesting. And also help the future development practitioners to understand the field better. And we're thankful for everyone. There are 30 of you, and we mentioned earlier. So we're signing in from Australia. There's somebody from Thailand. We have also somebody from Indonesia. I haven't seen him yet. Corba is joining us later. We also have from Nepal and Myanmar, and obviously there's a whole lot from the Philippines. Thank you for joining us. As you know, just a quick run through in terms of the norms. This is a space we'd also like to keep respecting as well. Obviously, please keep your mics on mute, but you can raise questions eventually along the way. The forum is going to be like a panel discussion. Our panelists, we've told them to please not be constrained in having to prepare PowerPoint presentations. That's basically what they'll be sharing it as is something that's already in their mind, especially 15 years in the development practice. So everything is in their mind and in their heart. So it's basically just, it's really just a free-flowing conversation. I hope you don't mind if I hear ambient, it's a prolonged ambient sound in your space. Please don't say it's rude if I mute you, sorry. So that, our conversation as is. Please post, of course, obviously, we welcome questions. Please post them on the chat box. Has kindly agreed to our request. So we have PowerPointed her to please monitor what's in the chat box for questions and whatever else. We will formally close at 4:30, but we're expecting that, you might want to have more conversations. So feel free to stay and do more conversations, but we will formally close at 4:30. But again, the Zoom, this particular session will remain open until perhaps for about 15 minutes or so. Having said that, let me now welcome our panelists. And again, I also echo what Lachlan said to Eleanor, sorry, to, to Eleanor, to to Nan and to Jaramaya for your time with us today. Thank you so much for giving up an hour and a half of your day today to be with us. Let me just do a quick, a brief introduction of our three discussants, but I'll put the longer version on the chat box so you know them more intimately than what I will share. So Eleanor Trinchera, as I mentioned before everybody was on board, I've known her from way back. We were, I think, way back in college. And if there's somebody who says, literally a seasoned development practitioner, that would be Eleanor Trinchera. She's a program coordinator for Caritas International. She's been with Caritas since 2009. And by her account, that's around 15 years of practice with Caritas. But before that, she was working also in the Philippines, which is the southern part of my country, where our context is obviously we need a lot of peace building efforts there. But she manages Caritas programs in Bangladesh, Nepal, and the Philippines. And she oversees 6 projects on sustainable livelihoods. Eleanor sees herself as a companion to those people who are traveling the road to empowerment. And for this, for her, do no harm is very, very important. There's a quote that I'd like to share from what she shared in her bio. She said that peace is not merely the absence of war, but being able to live lives with dignity and without the fear of persecution. So Eleanor Trinchera. Eleanor, hi, welcome, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Nansan is a new friend. I just met her in preparation for this. So Nansan, she is currently working with the American Friends Service Committee. Her organization looks at issues of social cohesion, conflict, and investments in Myanmar. She used to work as a senior protection field officer with the International Committee of the Red Cross, and she does her work in the armed conflicts in the Shan state of Myanmar. And she was mainly responsible, as I've mentioned, for protection activities of the civilian populations and the populations who are in the prisons. So friends, Nansan, who's speaking to us from Myanmar. Let me introduce Sister Jaramaya Batha. She is with Sister Rosita, who will do the translation for her, and also helping out in the translation is Nirupama, who's also with MIDPA, is also from Nepal. Jaramaya Batha is a social mobilizer of the Navayoshi Center, which is based in Surkhet. Am I pronouncing this right? Surkhet in Nepal. Interestingly, and she works on gender equality and is very, very involved in programs against child abuse, child marriage, child labor, and human trafficking. So right now, her work is on providing technical support for Muslim women through savings and credits programs. If I may say, and one thing that stood out from the bio of Sister Jaramaya is she's a strong defender of women's and children's rights. So friends, they are our panelists. I will, once I fire away some of my questions, I'll put their bios also on the chat box so everybody becomes more familiar with our panelists. All right, so let's do the panel discussion now. Then after that, we'll do the breakout rooms. All right, so some of the questions already came from the participants who registered. So for those who registered and put in your questions, just watch out for the questions that you have because I integrated them, most of them anyway, into the panel discussions. So let me ask first, Eleanor, Nan, and Jaramaya. First with Eleanor, how did you start your journey as a development practitioner? And why did you choose to be one? You can be in business, you can do something else, but you chose to be in development. So, Eleanor?
Thank you for the question, Nelia. Before I respond to that question, I would just like to follow on from your presentation and Lachlan's presentation earlier, that although we are meeting virtually, we continue to acknowledge the traditional custodians that have for thousands of years walked upon and cared for the lands upon which we are all individually located. We acknowledge the continued deep spiritual attachment and relationship of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to this country and commit ourselves to the ongoing journey of reconciliation. Thank you. It all started when I was a young girl because my grandparents were both working in community development as part of the presidential arm for community development in the Philippines. And my dad also became a part of that organization, which is now called the Department of Interior and Local Government. So from childhood, I've been exposed to people coming and going to our homes and asking for assistance or support. And I have observed that people who had less opportunities were really grateful for even a small assistance that they received because it contributes to making a difference in their lives. So being exposed to that, I also was encouraged by my father, who was a graduate of the University of the Philippines, that I couldn't go anywhere or to any other university except the University of the Philippines, which was at that time was known for service to the people. And being educated in the University of the Philippines, like Nelia, we were exposed to the different types of doing service to the people or serve the people. Yeah, I was exposed to private corporations because my dad was working in one of the fertilizer companies, but then I was given time to do an internship and I didn't really like the corporate world. So here I am ending in community development and being a development practitioner. Thanks.
Thank you, Eleanor. Nan? Same thing. Why did you start? Why did you work in the development work?
Thank you, first of all, for this opportunity to share my experience. So first, I would like to share, I would like to say that as you would also notice from, the introduction from Nelia, my experience has been not really around development, but it has been mostly around humanitarian works and also social work. So actually, I started my journey in the beginning mostly as a social worker, but gradually later I found my way to this field of humanitarian development and peace and conflict later on, as I get more experience, learn about my challenge through different experience. So I started when I was 19 years old, back in when I was doing my undergraduate degree in Thailand. It was not a paid job. I did a lot of volunteer and internship with different organizations based in Thailand who are working on migrants, who are assisting the migrants from Myanmar and those who are working with the refugee, because we have a lot of refugee camp on Thai-Burma border from Myanmar, and we also have a lot of migrant workers from Myanmar who are working in Thailand, like 2 million or 3 million migrant workers. So yeah, I work with these organizations. So it was when my passion started. And why did I choose to involve in these social work and humanitarian is mainly because it is where I'm coming from, the current situation that Myanmar is going through, because we have both humanitarian needs, and also we are one of the least developed country in the region. So we also have a development issue ongoing, and we also have active fighting, active conflict. So after I graduated from my college, I came back to Myanmar, and at that time, there are armed conflict broke out in the state where I am coming from. So we have a lot of internally displaced people. We have a lot of protection issues. So I saw the vacancy announcements with the International Committee of the Red Cross. So I saw the opportunity. So I applied for the job, and I got it. I would say it's mainly because of my internship and volunteer works that I got accepted to this field of humanitarian. Yeah, so that's how I got here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nan. Sister Jaramaya, same. How did you start your journey as a development worker?
Rosita.
Yeah, and Sister
I am Sister Rosita. I can read she has written and given to me, so I can read it for you in English. She wrote in Nepali. I will read it. This one. I am Jaramaya Batha, born and brought up in India, though I am a Nepali.
Oh.
But my father was a Gorkhali soldier working in India. So my childhood was in India. And we are three sisters. After the death of my only brother, my mother went into depression and we returned to Nepal and continued my studies in Surkhet, Nepal. Due to the gender discrimination predominant in our society, we were subject to a lot of negative talks and sarcastic talks as we did not have a brother. Because there has to be a boy in the family, so that is a practice here. Otherwise, you are looked differently. The people will tease you. Being a national singer, she has a talent of singing, which we call here dohari, which is you answer question answers in singing. So dohari. So she had participated. I had participated in various competitions. I had to travel a lot, and I met a companion. We got married and suffered a lot of domestic violence uh, uh, from my husband and from my family, and finally we were separated. I was neglected by my husband's family and maternal family. I tried to commit suicide. Then I met a staff of Navajyoti Center, Manisha Bhatia, who talked to me about Navajyoti Center and Sister Rosita, who is my guide and my God. I got the motivation to get out of my condition. She has taught me to care for the neglected people, to apply bandage to their wounds and counsel them. I took up a job with an NGO who would not pay my full salary. Before coming to Navajyoti, she had taken up a job in another NGO, but they did not pay her full salary, though she had to sign for the full payment. So she felt like it was injustice. So she left the job. So I went into depression, and finally I came to know about Navajyoti Center Surkhet, which is purely a social work organization under Nepal Nazareth Society and an NGO in Kathmandu. I was appointed as field coordinator to look after the work of women. I have helped to form women's savings groups and formed child clubs in the villages. What I am today is due to the capacity building I have received from Navajyoti Center. I have been given many opportunities to develop my abilities and talents. And this is some of the way she has gotten into started working with the women and children here in Navajyoti. Uh, she has always been going out to the villages and listening to people, especially suffering women, and she takes care of them, give them justice. They go with them to the police office also, so that they can get justice. So she started working like this way as a social worker.
Yes, thank you, Jeremiah, for sharing your story. I know it's been quite difficult for you to share the story, and thank you, Sister Rosita, also for translating it. I mean, it's a different context, and you've started to give us a sense of how it actually looks and feels. And maybe we can zero in now on like how. Can you please just briefly describe with us, and maybe I can start with Jeremiah. Can you please briefly describe, and let's focus on your work in humanitarian and disaster risk management? What types of disasters hit your places and the impacts of these kinds of disasters or humanitarian crisis in your areas? Can you start with Nan, please?
Start with yeah, I can start. So yes, after I graduated from my university, I joined, as I mentioned, with an international committee of the Red Cross, based in northeastern part of Myanmar in active armed conflict area. So I think most of you may already know, like ICRC has this special mandate and humanitarian mission to protect the lives and dignity of the victim of armed conflict and other situation of violence, maybe communal violence. So I was working as a protection field officer for 3 years. So the type of disaster would be, man-made disaster, because it's armed conflict. So to describe the work that I engage in, I was stationing for 3 years in the field, as I was the field officer. So I would engage in providing protection assistant as well as humanitarian assistant to the displaced people in northeastern part of Myanmar. So it includes, providing food, shelter, because in by nature, like, humanitarian assistance is responding to the immediate needs of the people and protecting their lives and dignity. So I got involved a lot in these kind of hands-on, like, works, like going to the field, distributing the assistance, helping in the process of building shelters, or facilitating the health care for the internally displaced person. So those were some of the work that I involved in. I also involved in joining the ICRC team, going to the prison, because one of the ICRC mandate is to help improve the condition, or the treatment and living condition in the place of detention and in the prisons. In terms of the kind of impacts, I would say, because in humanitarian response is different from development intervention. For humanitarian response, since you are responding to the immediate needs distribution, it's very tangible. You can see it, So based on my experience, it's different from what I'm doing right now. So it is very motivational, because you can see the impact of your work. Like, you are going there, helping the people, like distributing stuff. But I would say that for development intervention, it would be different, because you are working on a more multi-dimensional dimensional approach, like economic development, social development, education, and health. So it would be I would be also interested to hear from our other development practitioner panelists, like how it is, like, how do you see and measure the impact in the development field. So I mean, for me, since my experience was mainly in humanitarian response, the impact were very imminent and you can see it. So yeah, there's my experience. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Nan. You pointed out that the difference between humanitarian and developmental work. That in humanitarian work, you see, because it's immediate, and so therefore you see the impact of your work. Can we hear from Eleanor? Because Eleanor, you do manage programs in Bangladesh, Nepal, and the Philippines, right? So, can you share something about how it is doing development work and humanitarian work as well?
Yep. Okay. Can someone share with me what they think of humanitarian work versus development work? Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll just proceed then. As Nan mentioned earlier, humanitarian work is addressing the needs immediately. So it's an immediate response, whereas development work looks at the structural issues, and then you address it holistically from economic, socio-political, and cultural responses. So my development work and humanitarian work started even when I was in the Philippines. So we would go into communities and look at what the communities are in terms of their political, economic, and social situation. And we work with them to find out what are their strengths, what are they capable of doing, and what can we do to enable them to get out of the situation they're in. Whereas if with humanitarian work, you go into a situation where you're addressing the needs of a disaster or a conflict. Like, for example, when in 2015, without a background in emergency work, I was thrown into responding to the Nepal earthquake. So at that moment, we were caught in a situation outside Kathmandu, and we had to move to Kathmandu to be able to respond to the situation. We had to ask people from the community to support the work that we were doing, and asking them we did a rapid needs assessment. That's a common term that you would encounter when you work in humanitarian assistance. So we did a rapid needs assessment of a certain community and came back to the office with what they needed and immediately procured the needs of these communities. So that's humanitarian response. But when you do development work, you have to talk to the community, find out what the needs are, what the strengths are, and devise a plan and look at all the how to implement it, what are the indicators that you would need, what would you need to see to be able to say that you have achieved the objectives that you have intended for the project. So in terms of the impact of the disasters that we have encountered in the communities, the Nepal earthquake was really huge, had a huge impact on the communities because some of them lost water, a lot of them lost shelter, and the livelihoods were affected. So yeah, that's how strong, that's why we need an immediate response when this kind of disasters happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Eleanor. Can I ask also Sister Jaramaya and Sister Rosita?
Okay.
Your work
Okay,
in
she has, yes.
humanitarian
What, okay, what she has shared, I will read it for you because I have already written down. Along with the human development, which is human development is like immediate help what we give it to people for their change. Along with the humanitarian development, I was always interested in other fields like physical, social, economic, political, moral development. From my childhood onwards, I was aware and I spoke against the type of discriminations prevalent in the society like gender discrimination, class, caste discrimination, and other social malpractices like superstitions, traditional practices, which come under humanitarian development. These things cannot be changed without a development. Due to this feeling, I decided to choose this field of development. In our Karnali province, there has been various natural disasters like landslide, flood, forest fire. During that time, I was able to reach the location, identify the real victims, and in coordination with the government and non-government agencies, and was able to provide the basic necessities like food, clothing, medical aid, psychosocial counseling, educational materials for students. During my service time, I faced many challenges that may come later on, I suppose. Came across with various social problems like human trafficking, drug abuse. I tried to for advocacy against the problems, and I tried to help the victims, and I had to face fear, warning, terror from the tormentors. Example, Anita Karki, the name is changed. She was 16 years old, student of class 8. She was trafficked by her own relative. She changed Anita's date of birth because she needed a some birth. She needed to make her certificate. Because of the citizenship she had to make in order to go out. So they changed her age from 16 to 23 and made her a citizenship, which is a very illegal thing. And then she was and she was taken to Nepal border, and Jaramaya came to know about it through somebody in the village. So immediately we all got together and called the lawyer, and we contacted the person who sent her, and we called informed the police also. And then Anita, through our involvement, like mainly Jaramaya was involved, and through that she was able to monitor was put. So this incident, I had to listen. For this incident also, I had to listen from her own relatives, so much of scoldings. And then we did not stop with that. Like we went on for the development, went to work. We put her back into school. She wrote her exam and she passed. And we built a small house for her. Her problem was that she had no money to build the house. She had no father. Mother was handicapped, and her younger brother was a drug addict. So she said they had one small hut and that was falling apart and that had no door. So she could not live there. So she wanted to make money to make their house. So we helped her through the help of other people in the village, in the ward office. We collected some money and we had some money. Together we put in and made a small house for her, and we rehabilitated her. So that is also like development work, because she had something to live on and then she could go ahead. Then another example is during natural disasters, people.
Sister Rosita, you're on mute.
Yes, okay. I'll continue a little more. During the natural disaster, that was a flood happened in 2014. So many people lost their houses, land, field, livestock, and agricultural products. They were left without any support. At that time, we provided basic necessities like food and food, medicine, those type of things, blankets. Uh, but later, what we did was that after the immediate help was given, later on, through Caritas Nepal's help and Caritas Australia's help, we were able to support 59 families with the shelters. We built a shelter for them with the 2 rooms, with the tin sheets. We made immediately after that, we made women's savings groups for the victims, provided financial support for income generation. Now they are involved in small business and earn rupees 10,000 to 25,000 in a month. And these are all people who are affected by the flood. So now they are also have become the members of Navajyoti cooperative. Okay.
Thank you, Sister Rosita and Sister Jeremiah. I guess that's, how do you say it, Lap? Like it's like the hazards of the trade. Sorry for the term. Like you get, this really really sad stories about what's happening to the plight of women and children. And how do you even think about respecting rights? Can I ask Nan, San, like you do work in prisons and in civilian populations, and try to be able to defend their rights. I was wondering, how do you actually do rights protection in the field, Nansan? And sorry, I need to ask you to as well. I know you're here, Alpha. Attorney Alpha also works with the UNHCR. So maybe also good to her insights about how do you actually, these are fundamental rights. So how do you practice them on field? How do you ensure that they're practiced on field? Nansan?
You mean how do I apply the principle, or you mean the protection work?
Yeah.
Like my experience around protection works in the field and prison. Yeah. So actually protection works like in the ICRC is very similar to development works. For in the ICRC, we have different like departments, like assistant department, which are health, engineering, and economic security. But for protection, it is more about, like you are engaging with the community, like talking to them, trying to understand their needs. And in the ICRC, protection is always the lead, always have to take the leading role of like when there's a field trip, like protection team member would be the one who lead the entire teams, which are composed of assistant like engineer or doctors or food and security staff. So the role of protection team is to try to understand the context. I think, if you are theoretically, you would say this is conflict sensitivity, but for ICRC, like this kind of practice has been put in place for a long time. So protection work is, is not that tangible. Like it is more like you are engaging with the beneficiary, with the conflict affected community, talking to them, trying to understand what kind of threats they are, facing. And similar to working in the prison as well, we try to understand, in the prison, like what is their treatment condition, what is the treatment situation, how is their living condition look like. So it's more about talking, trying to understand them, and trying to understand the whole situation. And it would be based on our analysis, it would be follow a different kind of intervention which would be done by other assistant department. Like if there's a poor sanitary in the prison, then the engineering would help build the toilet. Or if there are treatment like ill treatment in the prison, then we would ICRC would confidentially address to the authorities or to the prison department superintendent. So in the field as well, like if we find that there are some kind of international humanitarian law violation where the armed carriers are arresting the civilian, torturing them, so ICRC has this mandate to make the international humanitarian law known and understand by the armed carriers. If there's some kind of issue, ICRC would intervene, talk to the soldier, talk to the perpetrator, and facilitate contact and relationship between different communities. So I would say protection work is not that tangible. It's you can't really see it, but it has a lot to do with relationship building, communication, trying to understand the context and situation. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Nan. Attorney Alpha, are you there? She works with the UNHCR, and maybe she can also share with us how
Uh,
how the internet gets implemented until. But before you go on, Attorney Alpha, before you talk to us about it, guys, please feel free to put your questions on the chat box. We're still just feel free to do it. Yes, yes, Alpha.
yeah. Thank you, Nelia. Yeah, you can all call me Alpha. Yes. In our work on protection in the refugee agency, well, in my case, we mainly deal with internally displaced populations in the Philippines. And yes, protection is basically the essence of what we do. It is what we do and how we do things. So very similar to what Nan said earlier, that you have to ensure that you do no harm. And actually the approach in humanitarian intervention is very much linked to sort of how we see ourselves and how our presence affects the community. So actually in our work, we try as much as possible to prioritize the safety and dignity of the people that we are serving. And yeah, the do no harm principle. So basically, will our presence contribute to the safety and dignity of the population, or are we just going to make matters worse? So that's the primary consideration. So for example, in the field, if we are going to distribute core relief items, so for example, it's just solar lantern or hygiene kits, we have to make sure that we have enough for everyone. Because if we just choose certain people without like very and that selection is perceived by the population as very arbitrary, then we might be creating problems for the community when we leave. So it's always about communicating with the community what is the criteria. So if we are not able to provide for everyone, then who are these people and why are we just selecting? So for example, there's a criteria for vulnerability, we're just giving to the pregnant women or to the elderly, etc. And second is in the process of distributing the humanitarian aid, there should be a system that is also rooted in fairness. So, for example, we give priority numbers, or we have a separate line for the elderly or the pregnant women, so that they do not have to stand under the heat of the sun for a very long time. So all those things, it's both what we do and how we do it. So it's always about, yeah, as Nelia I think mentioned earlier, it's always about human rights. It's the human dignity being always the primary consideration in providing these items that will also help them in holding on to their dignity. Um, what else? Yeah, access by the people, and participation and empowerment. It's also really very important. In our work, we try as much as possible to first have an assessment and talk with the, if not the people, then the community leaders who are really in the ground, to really assess what are their needs. Because even if we do have items that we can give, it has to be relevant. So for example, we have in our stocks in the warehouse fleece blankets, but if the community is, in a tropical country and they really don't need fleece blankets, they might need, mosquito nets instead of fleece blankets. Then we should really know that before going to the field. And I think it's also important to have some sort of feedback mechanism, so that people can inform the provider of the humanitarian assistance if there's something wrong. So, for example, in the Marawi humanitarian situation, we've heard situations where the some government agencies had all of these food boxes already on stockpile for a few months. So when it reached the IDPs, there were already bugs in the rice, so it had to be communicated directly to the provider, so that it did not have to, blow up on social media or the mainstream, media like TV. So all those things, I think, aside from helping the people of concern, it also assists our partners in government to like improve their service delivery, and yes, comply with their mandate of protecting the people as the primary holders of that duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Alpha. Chris Kayon, who works with Asia Foundation, said in the chat that there's also, I mean, in response to what the conversation that we're doing right now on the topic of do no harm and rights, that the whole idea of balancing between upholding equity as our lens in responding to affected populations and working delicately in a majority minority context of many emergencies where field practitioners like us have to be always conscious about. I totally agree. Thank you, Chris, for that. Did you guys have any questions from anybody in the room? We have around maybe 3-4 minutes for the panel discussion before we go into the breakout rooms, and of course before that the games. Did anybody have any question? Or maybe I can ask the question about, there's always this, how do you say this, Eleanor, like participation, participatory development. How does it actually look like on field? Can we start with you? Uh, can we start with you, Eleanor? And immediately after that, maybe you can go ahead to answer Lachlan's question about any advice for students going into development work.
Yeah, participation in the field does not only mean that you ask the community and get their answers, but about the questions that you would like to address in a project. Let's say we're doing a sustainable livelihood project in one village in Nepal, and as part of that project, we would like to find out what they would like to do in the project. And then once they answer, you've done your survey, you've asked all the people what they want, and then you go back to your office and then just type and you submit a proposal saying that this is what we think the project should look like. But then when you look at the proposal, it does not reflect any of the answers that came from the community. But because you did the survey, some people claim that that's participatory approach already. Participation means you listen, you take into consideration, you write what you have heard from the community, give it back to them, and seek any additional information about what you have presented or what you have proposed. In some cases, when people go to the field, they just ask people, the villagers, what do you want to, how can we help you? And then people will start coming out with all the needs, a list of what they want. And then you select, in some cases, you just select what you can give because you don't have enough, enough resources. So instead of going into the field and asking all these questions, you limit your questions so that the and ask the relevant questions so that when people participate, you are able to get the real needs, and when you go back, you are able to address and reflect how the participation happened and how you are able to address the needs that they have provided. Yeah, in essence, some of the development projects, there's a failure in a way because when people submit or share with you what they want, there's no ownership. It doesn't go back to them, and they do not see how they contribute to the project that you have proposed. So like I said earlier, there are surveys done, and then the surveys are processed, prepared into project proposals where implementation plans are made. But then these do not reflect what the community or the villagers have said. So the ownership, there's no ownership because their thoughts, their opinions were not incorporated in those proposals. Sometimes there's also conflict created by these surveys because when we identify beneficiaries, we just give all the selection criteria. However, to be able to really incorporate how the community's voice, what some of our projects do is they open the selection criteria to the villagers. They said, we need people who are widows, we need women-led household, we need children-headed households or people with disability. And then they choose the people who they think should participate. And they come back with a list of who these people are. However, before finalizing that, the project staff would go back to the community and show the list that they have that they came up with. And after that, they validate, the people in the community validate the participants who were selected. And once they agree on it, that's when the project staff would incorporate the selected participants into the project. The question about
the advice to
advice
going into the better practice.
I think each one of us who really wants to see the difference that we make in the lives of the people we work with, especially the ones who don't have opportunities or privileges like we have. So I think listening and trying to understand the communities that you work with, or spending more time with them to understand their context, is one thing that would really enrich the work that you do in development.
Thank you, Eleanor. Before I call in for the question, there's a Alpha is also saying something about the advice to students. So she says, advice for students going into international development: be conscious. Be conscious of your position of power and privilege, both in terms of relating with your local NGO partners in case you end up working with international organizations like a funding agency, also with national colleagues, expat in relation to national staff. There's a lot of dynamics there, I must say so, and also in relating with committees of concern. Let's entertain one last question from Farah. Am will ask this, and then we'll go into the game and the breakout rooms. Am?
Thank you, Nelia. The questions from Farah. Are there any constraints, such as dealing or working with a government agency, that might undermine the progress of the project implementation? Or do you find any challenges due to the regional, national policies? If yes, how you deal with it?
Who would want to take on the question? Nan? Or
Yeah.
Sir Jeremiah? Or anybody from...
Yeah, maybe I can share some of the experience here in Myanmar. I would say, you know, like in both in the context of Myanmar, like whether it is in humanitarian intervention or development intervention, it is, I'm not sure about other contexts, but here in Myanmar, it is pretty much influenced by the government or the state interest and according to their agenda, you know, because here in Myanmar, like, you know, there's a guideline that whenever there's a humanitarian aids or development aids, you have to go through this process of procedure. So it's a kind of challenge, like you can only go to the area where government would allow you to go. So in that sense, it's already not a fair distribution of assistance or, you know, or development intervention. So it is being influenced a lot by the government interest, and it is really one of the challenges that we are facing here in Myanmar. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Sister Rosita,
Can we,
Jeremiah?
what Jeremiah has been talking here is we have had no problems with the government in implementing the programs, because what we have been doing is that we give them proper reports and audit reports as well as the activity reports, and we have a very good coordination with the government, and we take them also to the fields to see what is happening with their own eyes. They listen to the beneficiaries, so they are very much impressed by the program. So we have not had any problems so far. They have been very supportive of us, and when they have any kind of discussions, they always call us, and we have to be present. So that we have not found any problems so far because of the coordination what we have, and the cooperation also depends on the coordination. So since we are coordinating with them, they have no questions.
Right. Thank you, Sister.
And also they also visit the fields.
Thank you. And did you want to say
I
anything?
think that works also in a country where there's a minority majority issue, like working in a Muslim dominated country and a Christian with a Christian organization. So it helps if you provide orientation to the communities that you are not there to proselytize or evangelize, but do work that really supports livelihood or any of the activities that relates with development or any humanitarian assistance.
Right. Thank you. Christine has a question in the chat. Christine, is it okay if we put that as a question in the breakout rooms? Is that okay with you? Okay. I hear, I see, I think, I nod. Okay, thank you. Let's proceed to a very interesting development game that Alexis has put together, and then we'll go into the breakout rooms immediately after. So guys, prepare your Kahoots on your phones.
Hi everyone. So my name is Alexis. So we did prepare some few games, just some quick fun questions to light up the mood before we go to the breakout rooms. And yeah, it will I'll share my screen and yep. Okay, one moment. Do you see it now? Yep. So please go to kahoot.it and then please enter the pin below. So there will be 12 questions, and each question you will have you will have a chat there will be 20 seconds to 30 seconds time for you to choose from the options provided. Yep. Let's just wait for a few more people. So So the questions will be reflected on on the screens, and then once you go back, once you have the once we start, you will have to choose from your phones or from your laptops, the options that you would, the answers that you would choose. So probably, so there's 21 participants. Probably, if do you want to start now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
So it is my first time organizing this. Yep. So here we go.
The prize is bragging rights, right?
Yes. It's probably a quick question for everyone. Quick and easy one. Okay, so the answer is 193, and yeah, majority of us had got it right. So who's running? Okay, Amara. Next would be Seven, 6, 5. Yeah, this would be it. Okay, so 12, we've got yeah. Okay, so running is Amara and second is Lachlan. So 3 out of 12. So out of the 17 SDGs, what is the aim of goal 13? So this game will have 12 questions with general knowledge and some fun facts from different countries in Southeast Asia. 2, 1. Climate action. Oh, Chris is running. Yep. So fourth question will be, which country shares its borders with China, Thailand, India, Bangladesh, and Laos? So now we go to the countries in Southeast Asia. It's Myanmar. So one of our speakers is from Myanmar at the moment. And now, yeah, we have Chris as. So which of the following country has a living goddess? So 11 answers. Ooh, Nepal.
Ooh, Nepal.
I haven't been to Living God. I don't know what Living Goddess was. So Nepal, is it a landlocked country? Is it true or false? Currently it is. No. Ooh, So Mount Everest, which lies in Nepal, is yes, it's the highest peak from sea level. So if everyone knows Dr. Sanduk Ruit of Nepal, he has restored the eyesight of how many people? Yeah, 150,000.
Wow.
Who's running now? Who's SK?
Me.
Oh, Soumya!
Oh, I see.
That was you!
Guess what can take you far?
12, 10. Faster, guys. So which one is the answer? It's a Bengal tiger. Almost done with our quick game.
Soumya, go for bragging rights, Soumya. Oh, wow. Wow, amazing. Wow, Soumya.
Soumya is still running.
Oh, Soumya.
Now we move to another country. So what country is considered as the second largest archipelago in the world? I know the answer to this one. So I'm from the Philippines.
Yay! Woo, Soumya!
This is funny.
So in Southeast Asia, what is the most densely populated city? Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, Singapore, Manila. It's Manila, guys. So most of everyone got it wrong. Most of them chose Jakarta. So who's Kirby the Hermit?
Yay! Wow, 10 of
Number
12.
one is...
Yay!
Oh my goodness, that is awesome.
Anyways, guys, good job.
Bragging rights.
Tried our best. Yep, and yep, I'll stop sharing now. Congratulations again to the winner.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was fun. I mean, it's part of what we learned in development work. And our participants from the Philippines are complaining because of their poor internet connection. I'm so sorry, guys. In the next round, in the next series, you better get your connections with internet right. All right, let's go into the breakout group. Alexis, can you please do the allocations? But we'll see you back at around 4:25. But of course, for everyone who wants to go on doing the conversations, we'll put you back in the breakout rooms.
Nelia, just before we go, is there any specific topics for the breakout rooms, or it's just an open discussion?
Yes. You can actually start with the question that Christine raised and we weren't able to handle in the plenary. Sorry, before I go on, there are 4 groups. So the 3 will have all the discussion. We'll have 1 discussion each. But is it still the same, Alexis? Do we still go for the 4, or we can now do the?
Yeah, I've created 4 breakout rooms, which will be a combination of the speakers and the practitioners and students as well. So you could, yeah.
But we only have 20 now. Maybe we can do the 3 instead. But yeah, maybe break them out into the 3 first, and then we'll allocate.
Into 3 first? Okay, I'll do that.
Into the rest, yeah. please start with a question, if you want to, anyway, with the question that was raised by Christine. Either copy, paste it, or take a photo of it. Oh, Talas had to go. Yeah, bye. Thank you.
I think we are the first one.
Hey, all. Sorry, I was in and out of the breakout room. So was it?
How do I?
Sorry?
I couldn't see the. I couldn't see the chat box.
It's fine. It's really fine. It was really just a free-flowing conversation.
Tapos na?
For the breakouts, yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Welcome.
okay.
You're back in the room.
I couldn't see anyone. I couldn't see everyone.
Okay. Maybe you. Sorry. Maybe your broadband is like the Mindanao's broadband. So maybe something like that. Sorry, Eleanor.
That's all right.
Don't add so.
Hi, Chris. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Any insights? Was it interesting? How did you find the breakout rooms? Any insights anybody would want to share? Or something that stood out from the conversations? You don't have to. But if there's something that you want to share that you think would be, very beneficial to the other groups, feel free to do so. Alpha says something about capacity building. In our experience, we not only conduct trainings, but also sustain mentoring, such as secondment of staff to a particular government agency. Yeah. Yep. All right. And you know which area has problems with internet because they put it on chat. Some organizations also include experts in funding. Sorry, what's funding package? Like putting together the package for funding purposes, maybe. Yes. Soumya, did you have anything? Putting you on the spot, did you notice? Is there something that you thought was interesting and would want to share in the big group?
Well, actually, I'm not very good with repeat summarizing, but one thing which we were just had started talking and got cut off was when should we take the face of an expert? So the whole idea of participation and listening to the community. So how does that happen? So Eleanor was talking about that bit. So I wonder if she still wants to continue explaining that.
Yep. As I was saying earlier, when we see the community struggling with how they address their situation, we could provide some assistance in that area, and to also provide the framework from which they can work on.
Okay, thank you. We only have 3 minutes to go. I'd like to ask this question, something that was asked in one of the those who registered initially, and I'd like to ask this question as a way to slowly, close the. But as we said, we'll close it at 4:30 formally. But for those who want to stay, please, if you can, please just stay on, and we'll be happy to be around and do the conversations with you. So let me ask this question to Eleanor first, and then to Nan and Jaramaya. Was there something that you wish you knew when you started in development work? And what is it? What is the most important thing that you have learned through your work? Maybe let's start with Eleanor.
Yep. Thank you, Bane. I think I wanted to do development communications to be able to really work with the communities, because I started in the Philippines, and I thought instead of doing just the general humanities, I could have gone into development communications and understood how the communities work. But in hindsight, the field experience was more enriching than having the theoretical background. So having the theoretical background sometimes gives you the baggage of is putting things in certain silos and categorizing everything that you see in the field. But then when you come from the field and you go into the actual study, you're able to relate what you have seen in the field and enrich the the learnings that you have had. So what have I learned from working in development in the last 15 years? I think being able to empathize and listen to what the community says and see and recognize that they are the ones who are driving the changes that they want in their lives. It's not us, but we are here to facilitate or to support or mentor and accompany them in their journey towards development or community empowerment. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor. Nan?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I speak?
Okay. Is it okay with you, Nan? Let's go for Sister Rosita.
It's okay. Go ahead. Yeah. I can.
Okay. According to Jaramaya, she says before she became a social practitioner, she had the opportunity to learn matters which would increase her knowledge, skill, resources, and capacity. Because in the beginning she had no background, she has learned mostly from experiences, but later on she had some inputs and trainings which she attended. So that she said in the beginning, if she had some of those trainings for capacity building, she would have done much better than before. And so she also saying what are the learnings she has is through my work I have developed self-confidence, self-awareness, and I have learned that it is important to help those people in the society who are poor, destitute, helpless, senior citizens, differently abled, victims of injustice to attain justice. I also learned that when I have to deal with the works which are very risky, very challenging and problematic, I need to keep myself composed. I should not jump into things. I should think, reflect, and then act. So that I can help the people, understand them, have compassion for them. And also she is telling because of her background, she herself have gone through a lot of sufferings. So she has a lot of compassion for those who are suffering, and she likes to reach out to them whether it is day or night. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sister Jeremiah and Sister Rosita. Nan?
Yeah, so to start with my reflection on my own, experience working in humanitarian field, if I have to go back or, things that I wish I knew would be, Eleanor also mentioned about the importance of, having this theoretical knowledge on humanitarian field or in development field. I didn't have that, and my undergrad degree was in political economy, which has nothing to do with development and humanitarian. But I was being thrown into the field immediately. Soon as I get appointed as a protection field officer, because of the emergency situation, I had to go immediately to the field. And a lot of things like what we were talking about, like conflict sensitivity or do no harm, actually, to be honest, I only learned that after I worked with ICRC and I went for further study for my master degree in Sydney. So like I didn't have that theoretical background, but I also agree with Eleanor that you learn more with your field experience. So the benefit is that if you have theoretical background, like you can see more of a bigger picture and you can also relate to a lot of things. But at the same time, on the other hand, if you have field experience first and you go for master degree, like in the academic field, you have a lot of case in your head. So you can apply like your experience back to the theory, so you learn faster, like because you already have all those experience. So I would say that both of them are very important, and they are, you know, reinforcing each other. It is good to have both theoretical background and also field experience. And I think as most of you are already doing advanced degree, and most of you are international development practitioner students, so I think you are all more than, you know, ready and well equipped compared to when I first joined this development and humanitarian field. So it is one thing that I wish is, you know, to have a better theoretical understanding. So and I thought that I would have done better, like back then. So that's one thing. I think that's the question, right?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, ma'am. Yep. Thank you. It's 4:34 by my watch. If you have to go, feel free. For those who want to stay, bye, Lak. Thank you. Thank you for joining us the whole time, Lak.
Thank you very much to the guests who are coming along.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you to Sophie. If you want to stay, please stay. For those who want to go, but for those who are still staying, there's a question on given the situation, COVID-19. What's the impact on the field? Do you see some changes towards development agenda being more locally emerging, or it still remains to be externally driven and that donors find a way to transfer accountabilities, but it's still, I see smiles on the faces. So anyway, so you know the question basically. Yeah, so that's a question. Anybody can answer, but I see the smile from Eleanor, so I might start with Eleanor, then let me hear from anybody who wants to, you know, share your views.
Okay. Thank you, Nelia. Yeah, COVID-19 has presented some challenges, not only to the development practitioners, but to the communities whom we work with also, because in a lot of countries, the restrictions, the lockdowns have happened, and they couldn't work, the trainings, the workshops, and the seminars or the network meetings could not happen because these are big activities. But what is interesting is if you have a local staff who's in the village, they are able to conduct or continue the activities with 2 or 3 people, or the maximum number of people allowed during the restriction. So the project work still continues, and they are able to get in touch with the head office or their regional offices or field offices through phones, through digital communication, like the online applications that we use, and through in cases of international programs, we are also able to connect directly with the villages, because most of the villagers now have access to smartphones or phones, so we can do text messaging or phone calls. So it brings us even closer at this time, but the face-to-face interaction is not there, so you can only hear the voice. You cannot see the face or the facial the reactions, the facial expressions when you talk to them. But yeah, it has changed a lot, and it means that monitoring and evaluation of these project activities during this COVID situation will be done remotely, because international programs from Sydney or in the case of our organization, we are not allowed to travel anywhere. Thanks.
Thank you, Enoy. Chris, can we hear from you? Sorry, Sister Lucille, can we hear from Chris first, and then I'll call you, yeah? Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, just very, probably 3 points, quick 3 points. First point, we've seen the explosion of youth being the forerunners of many of our peace building, humanitarian development work. They were operating from the safety of their homes, in front of the camera, but they were really effective. That's one. And so we're trying to build on that and make sure that I'm trying, for instance, for me, for a program manager, I'm trying to transform that transform most of these youth networks to become the direct beneficiaries, the direct partners ourselves, not going through a big NGO and then working through them. So it's really, so that has changed a lot, and you have to be purposive to do that. The first point. The second point is that we've also seen uh, a field of really good NGOs that we've been working for a long while, 9, 10 of them, and then you'll have 7 who's really good, and then you'll have 3 who cannot catch up. That's a reality. Some of those have to rely on in-face conversations, and I cannot say that they're a bad organization because they also have young people in their ranks, but there's just going to be gainers and losers in this time. And so you have to be conscious about that, but not leave them and try to see what you can still do for them. And the last point I wanted to say was that it's still a challenge to be able to really get to really make sure that you work with directly with partners in the field. And I can say that because I've seen how different it was, because I've worked with a really, really big international org, and now I'm in an international org, but sort of like in the middle. And so I've seen both the opportunity to have that, you know, the easy pivot, so to speak. I have more flexibility now working with an international organization, but that's in between the Asia Foundation. And I can see that's going to be where much of the new normal would be. And that is to work through the strength of middle organizations, not the ones on the extreme right where they really hold their money. So I leave it at that because I do have to leave. But this is a very engaging discussion, and thank you very much for I've missed this conversation of different experts and experiences. And so maraming salamat, dagang salamat from Mindanao. I have to go though. Salamat. Apa.
Thank you for having joined us. All right, we have
Thank you.
about 2 minutes to go. Or did you guys have any questions to each other? I have one last question, but I'll put that at the really last question. Did you have any question for Enoy, for Eleanor? Sorry, Sister Rosita, you were about to say something, and Sister Jaramaya. I'm so sorry. You're on mute.
What I wanted to say was, like during the COVID-19, what Eleanor said was true. Many of our programs and activities we had to continue through phone, and also like there were close by areas where we could reach, we reached, but there were lots of restrictions from the government that we could not bring people to the center. But even then, we have few times we have provided services restricting the numbers, because like out of almost 20 people could gather following all the health restrictions. So we have taken all the precautions. With that, we have almost 20 people at different times. We have gathered here for discussions and give them a moral support of what is going on, so that they don't go into more depression. So we have done some of that programs, and many times we have called them on phone. And yesterday, for instance, we had about 25 children who came here to celebrate Children's Day, which is a National Children's Day, was yesterday, and they did not want to stay home because they were very bored. They said they want to do something. So they had come here, they had to do 3 hours of yoga and meditation. Then after that, they made their placards requesting government why they are not doing anything for the children during the COVID-19, because almost 6 months they are staying at home and no provision to have education even at home. So they had questioned the government so many things, what is happening, why they have neglected the children. And now because children are staying at home, they are forced to do some work. So child labor is increasing. So this type of questions they had put on the placard, and in the middle of the town, they went and stood in the main road. So that was a very good experience, I thought, for us also. The children themselves had planned. So that way we are able to do certain activities at this time.
Sure, thank you. That was inspiring. Did anybody have any last questions before we let our discussants go and everybody spends whatever is left of the afternoon? Well, afternoon here in Melbourne.
Yeah, I think just one quick question, because I was amazed by what Alpha said about mentoring, and I'm not sure if mentoring is part of the capacity building. Is it considered to be that way? But in my opinion, how do you now, capacitate your partner agencies or local communities, given that social distancing and everything is online, and not all communities also doesn't have access. So do you stop that portion of capacity building, or do you how do you adapt? Probably.
Yeah, thanks, Alexis. For the training for our government interlocutors, their technical staff, and our partners, we migrated it from face to face to online. So yeah, we had to be creative in designing our module similar to what was done here. Like we have these online quizzes and games also. So we all had to be like the teachers of online classes in terms of designing the module. Also, our some of the staff that we have seconded to our government partners also from time to time report to work in those offices. They're not required to report to that office every day, but if they are needed to provide support, then they definitely should go. We just ensure that the standard protocols are observed if ever they have to go to meetings or interact face to face with the other persons in that office. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think the hard truth is a lot of us in humanitarian work is also considered frontliners. So we hope that we do not catch the virus and we do not have to, to be hospitalized or anything. But yeah, it's just observing the health protocols and and what, praying. I don't know. So, but that's the reality. It's very easy now to be exposed to the virus. Also, I would like to add, this may not be related to capacity building, but more on the ensuring that as humanitarian workers or as development workers, we do not also bring the disease to the communities that we are serving. So that's also very important. It's our responsibility. It's part of our do no harm policy approach to not bring that to them. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, I I'd like to ask one last question. Can you imagine a world without development practitioners? Can you? Can you imagine a world
Oh,
without
yes.
development practitioners? Yes, Alpha. Can you share why?
Ako siguro, if colonialism did not happen. Yes. Because then communities, tribes, countries will be able to resolve whatever they need on their own, and uh, and will have the resources and the capacity to do that based on their own knowledge and the indigenous knowledge that they have. I don't know, but it's wishful thinking because it's not the reality. So
Yeah,
Can we speak?
that's actually my struggle now, Alpha. So anyway, let's chat later about where I am right now in terms of
yeah,
looking at
yeah,
web development work and having gone through what I'm going through here in terms of studies. Anybody would like to share your thoughts? One last. Yes, Sister Rosita.
According to Jaramaya, what she has talked is there has to be development practitioners. I cannot imagine a world without the development practitioners. Only they can identify the existing social problems, superstitious practices, and various unjust practices in the society and pass it on to policy making level. And it is a duty of the development practitioner.
All right.
That's
Thank
what
you.
she has to say.
Thank you. Can we hear from same question? Can I hear? Sorry, Sister Rosita, you're saying something still?
We had a few pictures, photos. So will we get a chance to show them about our work?
Maybe if we let's ask first for the responses of Eleanor and Nan to the question, and then we can have that as our last photos from your community. Yeah. So Eleanor and Nan, your thoughts about, can you imagine a world without development practitioners?
Yeah, as Alpha mentioned, a world without, a development practitioner or humanitarian workers would be a world, it would be an ideal, or I don't know, and it's possible if we learn to live in peace with each other and also with nature. We also should not forget that sustainable development and, not overuse the resources, treating the Mother Earth, with kindness. It is also very important, and it's also part of why it is the reason why we are facing all these scarcity, different issue around development. So I think there's one of, I imagine that we will soon learn to live in peace with nature.
Eleanor.
Yeah, just like what Nan said. It's at this point in time, it's hard to imagine the world without humanitarian and development workers, because there's a huge, there are institutions and organizations that are in place already, and it's so hard to go back to the traditional or indigenous practices, even if we think that they are effective and they work well. So as humanitarian and development workers, I think we can be the catalysts or the facilitators of bringing back some of the practices that we can combine with the modern practices. But it is a real struggle, given that the inequality and the powerlessness of some groups. So it's a really difficult struggle to be able to continue without the assistance of development and humanitarian workers, and to get them to generate the responses from the communities and the people who really know what needs to be done but are voiceless, powerless, and it's really nice probably to just think of a sustainable world where everyone lives in peace. But yeah, that's a dream for everyone to look forward to.
Yeah, that's true. Sister Rosita, before we ask you to show your photos, I think there's a question from, maybe let's entertain this one really last question from Nong.
From Nongs, from my experience of working from ILOs with other local partner organizations for almost 3 years under peace, recognitions, and development project in Myanmar, we have done a lot of trainings related to the sustainable development, but after the organization left, some of the villagers are not following the same principle. So do you have any suggestion for that, Eleanor, Nand, and Sister Rosita and Jaramaya?
So it's the sustainability of the practices that were done in the community after the organizations have left. Sometimes the key to be able to sustain the project is really work with the communities, the villagers themselves, and the surrounding stakeholders like government, the private groups, all the people in a certain community, and emphasize the need of working together or enriching the capacities of each of these individuals or stakeholders, and show that working together will really support that whatever project they're doing. And once they see that their interaction will generate an ongoing activity, even during when the organization is still present, and they reinforce those kind of interaction, then probably after the organization leaves, the community is able to sustain itself because the government structures, the private individuals, and all the other relevant stakeholders have the ownership and have the capacity to continue the activities, the project activities, or whatever intervention happened into the future.
Rosita, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. On that matter, what I would like to speak is that sustainability, we are also doing the same thing. Many times we are giving them trainings, but at the same time we are not leaving them. That we make them sustainable by themselves. Even if we don't go, they are able to continue. Like we have the women's groups. We have left all the old groups, about 32 groups we had earlier days. We have made them very strong because they are able to continue. Their leaders are very good. They have meetings, monthly meetings. They continue. And now what we have done that now we don't follow them up. We have for a few years, once a year, twice a year, we used to call the leaders and then just have a follow up. Not a long time. So reporting what is happening, very informal group. Now what we have done is these groups, we have formed them into a cooperative. So different areas we have made these cooperatives, which is for saving and credit cooperative. And they are part of that cooperative, and they themselves are managing now that we don't need to go behind them. And they are carrying on because they have become capable of leading. There is leadership developed in the groups and group leaders, so they are able to manage on their own view. That's what is happening to our groups these days. But the latest ones, we still continue until they are able to stand on their own feet and able to continue. But we only give them back support. We are not in the front. We are only at the back just to see what is happening. We don't leave them completely, but just an occasional. Like sometimes even through phone, we ask them what is happening, how it is going on. That is what same thing we have done with IPM also. Eleanor knows. Different groups are there, but we still follow them up not directly, indirectly also we follow them up.
Yeah, and in the project management language, that's the exit strategy or the exit planning.
Yes.
So what Sister Rosita shared was before the project leaves, we create cooperatives which can carry on the work that has been done by the project, and that's what they're implementing in Nepal.
Thank you. Nan, did you also want to share something about what was asked?
Just around sustainable development project here in Myanmar, based on my experience, because the concept of sustainable development itself need a holistic approach, and also as mentioned by one of our panelists, you also need the condition and the support of the system, like the responsibility should not only lie on the community, but also the surrounding condition, the situation, the system. For instance, like you are raising awareness about, sustainable development, or why you should not, why using, how to say, firewood is bad for the environment, that you cannot just go and tell the community. You have to create a situation or infrastructure where they don't need to use charcoal, or they don't need to use firewood, they don't need to cut down the tree. So I would say that system is very important, for the community to be able to practice or to be able to live sustainably. So I think it require holistic approach, and also the system is also very important and play important role in achieving sustainable development.
Sister Rosita, as a way to close, you might want to show the photos that you were saying that you wanted to show about your community. And
Yes,
then
yes.
close.
Yeah, ready.
So it's like a PowerPoint presentation?
There are some photos.
Okay. And so maybe while they're setting it up, I hope it was a wonderful afternoon for everyone. It was a very worthwhile time for me to be spending such a wonderful time with our speakers. Eleanor, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing while they're setting it up, but we might just lose the connection in a bit. Thank you for being with us, Nan, a new friend. Thank you to you as well for sharing your insights. I don't know if my fellow MIDPA colleagues, did you want to say anything for our discussants?
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you to Eleanor for, setting up, reminding us of the, the ground rules, that we are here to assist only, and not, we are not the owners of the projects. And also for Nan also, and for Jaramaya for sharing that, development practitioners or aspiring ones are, still important in the policy making process. So we still have an impact, not just in the local communities, but also in the strategic level as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us, and I hope it was helpful.
Absolutely. Even I have been in the field for so long. I learned that.
Yeah.
And
thanks a lot. And I hope that my experience I also give you some idea and
of
some.
Of course, definitely.
And it's useful. Yeah.
And I think just going back to the policy making issues, we can also look at advocacy, community advocacy, because getting the experience from the communities and having that strong experience will substantiate the policies that we can all support. So yeah, advocacy is also an important component of development work, because we cannot continue doing development work if there are no changes in the policies that affect the communities whom we work with.
It's true. I agree. Yeah. Are you ready?
We are not getting the net connection. There is some disturbance.
Well, maybe you can send it to us and we can show it in the next activity, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
Yeah, because it seems your screen keeps freezing.
Sorry,
their screen keeps freezing, so it might be the slow connection.
Yes, ours is a slow connection.
So maybe you can send it to us, Sister Jaramaya and Sister Rosita, so that we can show it in the next activity that we have, if that's okay with you, because yeah, the internet is slowing down, and this is really the price of the digital world. But again, thank you. Just a quick announcement. We'll have the second of the series will be on September 30, same time. We're still looking for speakers, but it's going to be on gender. So same questions, but more specific on the field of gender. Again, thank you. May I just request my colleagues to stay, but thank you so much, Eleanor.
Yeah.
Good to see you soon.
Thanks. Thank you, Jaramaya, and good to meet you, Nan.
Good to meet you, Eleanor.
And thank you to MIDPA for inviting us to share our experience and insights.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening to us and giving us a chance to speak.
Of course, obviously, it was, yeah, it's really a well-deserved time with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
जेंडर समझिए ही नहीं सवाल हो रहे सर